Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the waning hours of day, a myriad of colors seeped through the anthropology department's windows, bathing the room in golden hues. Each ray of light illuminated an archaeological wonder, from the mounds of research papers to artifacts that whispered of forgotten places. Amidst this organized chaos, an elderly office dwelled. The haven's inhabitant, whose years of devotion to academia were etched into his being, stood beside a display case, his attention wholly consumed by an item within. The person's garment, bearing the seasoned patina of countless field trips, mirrored the hue of the savannah, while his sleeves hung nonchalantly mid-bicep. With careful precision, his hand, a roadmap of life's journey, followed the contours of a primeval mask, its craftsmanship echoing a tribe's soul. "You're determined to partake in this ritual?" A voice, belonging to a figure lounging in the doorway, intruded upon the silent awe, its eyes manifesting skepticism. "Few have been welcomed into the Kavuri's sacred rites." Pausing to savor the moment, the scholar gently returned the artifact to its position. "I can't refuse. The research implications are too significant. Just remember, the university can only extend your sabbatical for so long, and frankly, I'm concerned about these so-called alignment rituals. We know precious little about their practices." Eugene nodded, tucking a loose strand of short blonde hair behind an ear. "Which is exactly why this first-hand experience is invaluable. Besides, from everything I've gathered, the ceremony is about spiritual alignment, bringing one's inner self into harmony with their outer existence. Nothing dangerous." Famous last words of many an anthropologist. Martin shook his head.
"When do you leave?"
"Tomorrow morning. 6 months with the Kavuri in their isolated mountain region. Limited communication. Full immersion." "Well, good luck. I expect a full report when, if, you return." The journey to the remote village took days, first by plane to a country whose name many colleagues couldn't pronounce, then by increasingly primitive forms of transportation, until finally arriving on foot, guided by a local who had been Eugene's contact for years. The Kavuri settlement wasn't what Western minds might envision when thinking tribal village. Though removed from modern infrastructure, the community had its own sophisticated social structure, architecture that harmonized with the surrounding environment, and traditions dating back countless generations. For weeks, Eugene lived among them, documenting daily practices, learning the language beyond the basics already studied, and gradually being allowed closer to their spiritual ceremonies. The Kavuri shaman, an elderly figure with eyes that seemed to contain the wisdom of centuries, took particular interest in the foreign researcher. "You carry much conflict," the shaman said one evening through Eugene's interpreter. "Your spirit struggles against its vessel." "I'm not sure I understand." Eugene glanced down at the notebook, already filled with observations. The shaman smiled. "Understanding is not required for truth to exist. You will participate in the alignment ceremony at the next full moon. It has been decided." The night of the ceremony arrived with unexpected swiftness. The village center was transformed with elaborate decorations, symbols Eugene had never seen before painted on stone surfaces, aromatic herbs burning in carefully arranged patterns. "Drink," the shaman instructed, offering a wooden bowl containing a liquid that glowed faintly in the firelight. "What is it?" Eugene asked, academic curiosity momentarily overriding the researcher's normally cautious approach. "The bridge between masks," came the cryptic reply. "It allows the spirit to see itself truly." The liquid tasted of earth and something indefinable, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but profound in a way that defied description. The drums began, their rhythm matching Eugene's heartbeat with unsettling precision. The villagers moved in patterns that seemed random at first, but gradually revealed complex meaning, like a language written in motion. Hours passed in what felt like moments. The world blurred, sharpened, then blurred again. Eugene remembered fragments, being painted with symbols, speaking words in the Kavuri language that hadn't been learned, feeling a strange sensation like being simultaneously in two places. Then darkness. Morning arrived with gentle insistence. Eugene awoke on a sleeping mat in the guest dwelling, physically unchanged, yet somehow fundamentally different. There was no dramatic transformation, no visible alteration, just a profound sense that something essential had shifted.
The alignment has occurred,
the shaman stated upon visiting.
Your spirit now recognizes itself.
I don't feel any different physically, Eugene said, checking for any visible changes. The shaman laughed.
The Western mind always looks for physical proof. The alignment is not of the body, but of awareness. You will understand as your spirit guides you forward.
The remaining months with the Kavuri passed quickly. Eugene documented everything meticulously, though the experience of the ceremony itself remained somewhat blurred in memory. The research was coming together beautifully. This would surely lead to groundbreaking publications upon return, yet throughout those months, something subtle had begun to change. Eugene found attention repeatedly drawn to how the women of the tribe dressed, moved, spoke, not with the clinical observation of an anthropologist, but with a strange sense of recognition. Back in the United States, settling into the familiar apartment felt oddly uncomfortable. Everything was exactly as it had been left, yet Eugene moved through the space like a visitor in someone else's home.
Just readjustment,
Eugene muttered, unpacking the research materials.
Perfectly normal after extended fieldwork.
The first indication that something more significant had occurred came during an ordinary shopping trip. Walking past a clothing store display, Eugene stopped abruptly, attention captured by a simple white summer dress hanging in the window. Something about it called out with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. Without conscious decision, Eugene entered the store, approached the dress, and touched the fabric with trembling fingers.
Would you like to try it on?
A sales associate appeared with a professional smile.
Eugene began,
then paused. The standard response, explaining it wasn't for him, felt suddenly, inexplicably wrong. Yes, I would. In the changing room, Eugene stared at the reflection in the mirror. The white dress contrasted with lightly tanned skin, the cut surprisingly flattering despite being designed for a different body type. But it was the expression on Eugene's face that was truly revealing. A look of recognition, of rightness that had been absent for years.
This is beautiful on you,
the associate commented when Eugene emerged. The color really brings out your blonde hair. Eugene purchased the dress in a daze, carried it home in a branded shopping bag, and hung it carefully in the closet beside khaki pants and button-down shirts. For 3 days, it remained there, untouched, but constantly in thought. On the 4th day, Eugene put it on, stood before the mirror, and whispered,
"The alignment has occurred."
The following weeks were a journey of discovery. Eugene began researching gender identity with the same academic rigor applied to anthropological studies. The terminology provided frameworks: transgender, gender identity, transition, but none perfectly captured the experience. This hadn't been a lifelong awareness suddenly acknowledged. It was as if the ceremony had revealed a truth previously inaccessible. A phone call to Professor Martin was necessary before returning to campus.
I don't entirely understand what you're telling me, Eugene,
Martin said after the explanation.
I'm still working through it myself. The ceremony didn't transform my body, but it aligned my spirit with its truth. In Western terms, I've come to recognize I'm transgender. I'll be returning to work as Roselina.
Roselina,
Martin repeated slowly. This is unexpected. For me as well, but I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't about the Kavuri somehow turning me into a woman. Their ceremony simply revealed what Western culture had taught me to suppress. Perhaps I always was Roselina, but lacked the framework to understand it. After a long pause, Martin responded, The university has policies about non-discrimination. There shouldn't be administrative issues. As your colleague and, I hope, your friend, I'll support whatever you need during this transition. The initial return to campus was challenging. Roselina chose a professional teal pantsuit for her first day back, her growing blonde hair styled simply but femininely. Students whispered. Colleagues stared. But the anthropology department faculty, accustomed to cultural variations in gender expression through their studies, adapted relatively quickly. Your presentation on the Kavuri spiritual practices was fascinating, Dr. Henderson commented after Roselina's first departmental seminar. Though I admit, many of us were distracted by your personal transformation. Which is ironic, Roselina replied with a small smile. Since the Kavuri themselves view gender with much more fluidity than Western academia, my experience should be a footnote to their remarkable culture, not the headline. Have you considered that your unique perspective now provides an unprecedented research opportunity? Few anthropologists have experienced such a profound shift in social identity. Roselina adjusted the sleeve of her pantsuit. I've thought about it, yes, but I'm wary of centering myself in the research. The Kavuri ceremony was about spiritual alignment. My gender realization was my specific outcome, not necessarily the universal result. As months passed, Roselina expanded her wardrobe. The white summer dress was joined by more professional attire, and eventually, a crimson evening gown for the annual faculty formal dinner. She began hormone therapy after consultations with healthcare providers, documenting the physical and emotional changes with the detailed observation of a researcher. Her apartment transformed gradually. The sparse, functional space that had been Eugene's bachelor quarters evolved into Roselina's home. More color, better lighting, furniture arranged to facilitate conversation rather than just utility. Pictures from fieldwork remained, now framed more elegantly. Books were reorganized by subject rather than author, creating a visual flow that pleased her newly acknowledged aesthetic sense. At the 1-year mark of her return, Roselina sat in her office reviewing student papers when a knock interrupted her concentration. "Come in," she called, looking up to see Professor Martin. "The dean asked me to deliver this personally." He placed an envelope on her desk. "Your tenure application has been approved unanimously." That's... Roselina blinked in surprise. I assumed with everything that's happened, there might be resistance. Quite the opposite. Your work with the Kavuri has been published in 3 major journals, and your recent perspectives on gender across cultures have generated more academic interest in our department than anything in the past decade. Martin smiled. Though I should mention some of the board members questioned whether your experience constitutes proper scientific methodology. They're right to question it. I don't claim my personal journey as empirical evidence, just as a unique vantage point that informs my research. She ran her fingers along the envelope's edge. Thank you, Martin. Your support has meant everything. You're still the same brilliant mind who left for that sabbatical, just with better fashion sense now. He gestured toward her tailored burgundy blouse.
That color suits you, by the way.
Roselina laughed. Who knew anthropological fieldwork would improve my wardrobe? As her second year as Roselina progressed, she received an unexpected email from the Kavuri region. Her former interpreter had gained access to internet communication and written to inform her that the village wished to know how her alignment had manifested. After careful consideration, Roselina composed a response explaining her transition, including photographs of herself now. The reply came weeks later. The shaman had nodded upon seeing the images and said simply, "The spirit has found its proper expression." This correspondence led to Roselina planning another expedition, this time with a research focus on gender expressions across indigenous cultures, with the Kavuri as just one example among many. The university approved her grant proposal with enthusiasm, recognizing the unique perspective she brought to the field. Before departing, Roselina visited a tailor who specialized in creating clothing for transgender women. "I need a practical field wardrobe that's professional but accommodates the climate and cultural sensitivities of the regions I'll be visiting," she explained. The tailor, a woman with decades of experience, took meticulous measurements. "Most of my clients want clothing that emphasizes their femininity. You seem to prioritize functionality." "Both matter to me," Roselina replied, watching as the tailor noted her shoulder width. "I want to be comfortable and authentic while maintaining professional credibility. And, if I'm being honest, after years of khaki everything as Eugene, I find I genuinely enjoy expressing myself through clothing now." The resulting wardrobe became one of Roselina's most valued possessions. Lightweight blouses in complementary colors, convertible pants that could become skirts when appropriate, and versatile layers that could adapt to changing environments while flattering her increasingly feminine figure. Her research over the next several years took her to communities across 5 continents. Roselina discovered that her personal experience often served as an unexpected bridge, opening doors that might have remained closed to traditional researchers. Indigenous elders who recognized her as someone who had undergone a spiritual transformation frequently shared aspects of their gender traditions that had previously gone undocumented. "In many ways," she explained during a keynote address at an international anthropology conference, "Western culture is the outlier in its rigid binary approach to gender. The communities I've studied demonstrate that humanity has always acknowledged a spectrum of gender expressions, often with spiritual significance attached to those who transcend traditional categories." The presentation displayed photographs from her fieldwork. Roselina with various indigenous groups, her blonde hair now grown long and usually pulled back in a practical braid, her clothing appropriate to each cultural context while maintaining her personal style. "Dr. Wells," a colleague asked during the question period, "how do you separate your personal experience from your academic observations? Isn't there a risk of confirmation bias?" "An excellent question." Roselina nodded. "I apply the same rigorous methodology I always have, documenting observable practices rather than interpretations. My personal journey gives me insight into questions worth asking, but the evidence must stand independently. I'm fortunate to work with peer reviewers who challenge my conclusions when necessary." After the conference, Roselina was approached by a publishing house representative. "We'd like to discuss the possibility of a book, part memoir, part anthropological study, about your unique research path." Roselina considered the proposal carefully. "I've resisted centering my personal story in my academic work." "Which is precisely why this would be valuable. Your scientific credibility is established. A thoughtful reflection on how your personal transformation has informed your professional insights would be groundbreaking." "I'll need complete editorial control," Roselina stipulated, "and I want to ensure the Kavuri and other communities are represented with appropriate respect and agency, not as exotic catalysts for my transformation." The resulting book, Alignment, Gender, Spirit, and Cultural Understanding, became a crossover success, respected in academic circles while accessible to general readers.
Roselina found herself navigating new territory: television interviews, speaking engagements at non-academic institutions, and correspondence from people across the gender spectrum who found resonance in her experience. 5 years after the alignment ceremony, Roselina returned to the Kavori village. She arrived wearing a practical expedition outfit in earth tones, her blonde hair in its customary braid, carrying gifts and research materials. The village had changed little, though satellite technology had made communication with the outside world more accessible. The shaman, now very elderly, greeted her with recognition.
"The spirit walks in its truth,"
the shaman observed through the interpreter. "You understand now what the ceremony revealed." "I do," Roselina nodded, "though I still have questions about the ceremony itself. Was this outcome, my gender alignment, an expected result?" The shaman's weathered face creased in amusement. "The ceremony does not create, it reveals. For some, the alignment is about purpose. For others, about connection to ancestors. For you, it was about the spirit's gender. The alignment always manifests as the truth most needed." During this visit, Roselina was permitted to document aspects of the ceremony previously kept private. She learned that the Kavori recognized 5 distinct gender expressions, each with specific spiritual and community roles. "In your Western world, this understanding would have been denied to you," the shaman explained. "Your spirit needed to see itself clearly, beyond the constraints you were raised with." Upon returning to the university, Roselina expanded her research focus to include the neurological and psychological aspects of gender identity. Collaborating with scientists from other disciplines, she helped establish a research center dedicated to cross-cultural studies of gender expression. Her office now featured artifacts from her various expeditions alongside photographs documenting her transition. Students often commented on the contrast between earlier images of Eugene in field gear and the polished, confident woman who mentored them. "Dr. Wells," a graduate student asked during a research meeting, "do you ever regret participating in the Kavori ceremony, given how dramatically it changed your life path?" Roselina considered the question, adjusting the sleeve of her navy blue blouse. "I don't frame it in terms of regret. The ceremony didn't change who I was. It revealed who I had always been beneath layers of cultural conditioning. The challenge wasn't becoming Roselina, but rather recognizing that Eugene had always been an incomplete expression of myself. But the physical transition must have been difficult." "Of course. Any significant life change involves challenges, but authenticity provides its own form of strength." She smiled. "Besides, as an anthropologist, I can't help but find the whole experience fascinating from a research perspective. How many scholars get to directly experience such a profound shift in social identity and status?" As her career progressed, Roselina became known for her elegant professional style: tailored suits in jewel tones, classic dresses for formal occasions, and practical but feminine field attire. Her colleagues often joked that she had embraced fashion with the same thoroughness she applied to research methodologies. "I spent decades ignoring an entire dimension of self-expression," she explained when asked about her attention to appearance. "Now I find genuine joy in the creative aspects of presentation. It's not vanity, but rather appreciation for an art form I previously couldn't acknowledge." 7 years after the ceremony, Roselina received the highest honor in her field, the International Anthropological Association's Lifetime Achievement Award. Standing at the podium in a floor-length emerald gown, her blonde hair elegantly styled, she addressed the assembled scholars. "Anthropology teaches us that human experience is vastly diverse yet connected by common threads. My research has been transformed by my personal journey, but the fundamental question remains the same. How do humans understand themselves within their cultural contexts?" She touched the silver pendant at her neck, a gift from the Kavori shaman, shaped in their symbol for spiritual alignment. The greatest insight I've gained isn't about gender specifically, but about how cultural frameworks either enable or restrict our ability to recognize our authentic selves. The Kavori ceremony didn't create something new in me. It removed barriers to seeing what was always present. After the ceremony, during the reception, a young anthropologist approached her. "Your work inspired me to pursue this field," they said. "But I've always wondered, if you hadn't undergone that ceremony, do you think you would have eventually recognized your gender identity anyway?" Roselina considered this thoughtfully. An unanswerable but fascinating question. Cultural conditioning is powerful. Perhaps I would have continued to experience disconnection without understanding its source, or perhaps another life event would have triggered the realization. She smiled. What I believe with certainty is that truth persists whether we recognize it or not. The alignment ceremony was my particular path to awareness, but the underlying reality was always present. At the 10-year mark of her transition, Roselina published a retrospective analysis comparing her experiences with documented gender practices across cultures. The paper challenged Western psychological frameworks that centered narrative consistency as proof of genuine gender identity. Many cultures recognize that spiritual revelation can initiate authentic transformation, she wrote. The Western insistence on a consistent, lifelong narrative of gender dysphoria fails to account for how cultural conditioning can mask even fundamental aspects of identity until an awakening occurs. Her apartment had long since been remodeled to reflect her aesthetic preferences: warm colors, natural materials, and careful attention to how spaces facilitated both solitary work and social connection. The only item remaining from Eugene's bachelor days was a desk, handcrafted from local wood during her first expedition, now refinished and serving as the centerpiece of her home office. "I find it appropriate that my workspace bridges both chapters of my life," she explained to a colleague who came for dinner. "My research continues the trajectory Eugene began, just with expanded perspective." "Do you still think of Eugene as a separate person?" the colleague asked, curious. "Not separate, no. More like a limited understanding of myself, like viewing a landscape through a keyhole versus opening the door to see the full vista. Eugene was a partial view, focused on the intellectual while unconsciously suppressing other dimensions of experience." Roselina's career continued to flourish. Her unique insights led to guest professorships at prestigious universities worldwide. She developed a reputation not only for groundbreaking research, but for mentorship that encouraged students to examine how their own cultural frameworks might be limiting their perspectives. During a sabbatical year, Roselina wrote her memoir, delving deeper into the personal aspects of her journey than her previous academic publications had allowed. The writing process proved unexpectedly emotional, requiring her to revisit the confusion and uncertainty of those early days after the ceremony. "For weeks after returning from the Kavori, I experienced what I can only describe as cognitive dissonance," she wrote. "I was still physically the same, still possessed all of Eugene's memories and knowledge, yet increasingly aware of a fundamental incongruence. The white dress in the shop window wasn't just aesthetically appealing, it was a recognition signal, like seeing a word in your native language after months of communicating in a foreign tongue." The memoir described her gradual transition, the carefully selected clothing that became external expressions of internal reality, the medical aspects approached with the same methodical research she applied to her academic work, and the social adjustments as relationships reconfigured around her authentic self. "Some friends disappeared from my life," she acknowledged in a particularly vulnerable passage. "Others surprised me with their unwavering support. Professional colleagues predominantly responded with respect, though I recognized that my established reputation and academic standing provided privileges many transgender individuals don't experience." Upon the memoir's publication, Roselina received correspondence from readers around the world, some sharing similar experiences of spiritual awakening leading to gender recognition, others expressing how her story helped them understand loved ones' transitions. Your description of the moment you first wore the white dress brought me to tears. One letter read, I've never had the words to explain to my family how clothing isn't just fabric to me. It's recognition. It's alignment. It's finally seeing myself clearly. 15 years after the ceremony, Roselina was invited to consult on an international research project examining indigenous spiritual practices related to gender and identity. The project brought her full circle, back to the questions that had initially led Eugene to the Kavori. During the project's planning conference, a young researcher asked, Dr. Wells, given your unique experience, do you believe Western medicine should investigate the compounds used in ceremonies like the one you participated in? Could they have therapeutic applications? Roselina shook her head firmly. That approach would fundamentally misunderstand what occurred. The ceremony wasn't effective because of a chemical compound that made me transgender. It was effective because it created a context where cultural barriers to self-recognition were temporarily suspended. She straightened the collar of her copper-colored silk blouse. Besides, such an approach would likely become another form of colonial extraction, taking indigenous practices out of their cultural context and reducing them to chemical formulas. As she entered her 60s, Roselina began to consider her legacy. Her wardrobe had evolved into a collection of timeless pieces that expressed her personal style. Tailored suits in deep colors, flowing dresses for formal occasions, and still those practical field clothes for expeditions, though she traveled less frequently now. Her blonde hair, now with elegant streaks of silver, remained her signature feature, usually styled in a simple but feminine cut that framed her face. Students sometimes mentioned that they could spot Dr. Wells from across campus by her distinctive silhouette and characteristic way of moving, confident, deliberate, engaged with her surroundings. The anthropology department organized a symposium to honor her contributions to the field. Former students, now accomplished scholars themselves, presented research building on foundations she had established. Colleagues spoke of how her work had transformed understanding of gender across cultures. When it was Roselina's turn to speak, she wore a tailored dress in deep burgundy, accessorized with the silver pendant from the Kavuri shaman and simple pearl earrings. Anthropology taught me to observe human experience with both scientific rigor and profound empathy, she began. When my own experience took an unexpected turn, those same tools helped me navigate unfamiliar territory. I documented my transition with the detailed attention I'd previously reserved for field notes. I analyzed cultural responses with the framework of someone trained to recognize patterns across social contexts. She looked around the room at faces representing different generations of scholars, different backgrounds, different approaches to the field she had dedicated her life to. But perhaps most importantly, anthropology had already taught me that what seems natural or normal in one culture may be constructed and arbitrary in another. That perspective gave me the courage to question everything I had previously accepted about myself. After the symposium, the university announced the establishment of the Roselina Wells Fellowship for Cross-Cultural Gender Studies, ensuring her approach would continue to influence future generations of researchers. 20 years after the alignment ceremony, Roselina received an unexpected message. The Kavuri interpreter informed her that the elderly shaman was near death and had requested her presence. Despite her own advancing age, Roselina made the journey once more to the remote village. She arrived wearing practical travel clothes in earth tones, her silver-streaked blonde hair braided simply, carrying only essential items. The village had changed more significantly this time. Satellite technology had brought greater connection to the outside world, and younger community members moved between traditional practices and modern influences with varying degrees of comfort. The shaman lay in a simple dwelling, attended by apprentices. Though physically diminished, those penetrating eyes remained alert, lighting with recognition when Roselina entered.
"You have come,"
the shaman said through the interpreter.
"The circle completes."
"I came as quickly as I could," Roselina replied, settling beside the elder. "I'm honored by your request."
"The alignment ceremony is our people's most sacred tradition,"
the shaman explained, voice weak but determined.
"Few outsiders have experienced it. None have carried its truth into the world, as you have."
"I've tried to represent the experience with respect," Roselina said.
"To explain that it wasn't about transformation, but revelation."
The shaman nodded.
"You understand. Now we ask something more. The knowledge of the ceremony must be preserved, but our ways are changing. The young ones look outward. Some traditions may be lost."
"What are you asking of me?"
"Document the ceremony. Fully, completely. Keep the knowledge safe until the time comes when our people seek to reclaim it. This is why you were brought to us. This is why your spirit was aligned. You are the bridge between worlds."
Roselina spent the next month in the village, working with the shaman's apprentices to document every aspect of the alignment ceremony, the preparations, the sacred symbols, the precise composition of the ceremonial drink, and the philosophical understandings that gave the ritual its meaning. "This knowledge is not for publication," she clarified to the apprentices. "I will preserve it in a secure archive, accessible only to the Kavori people when they request it." Before leaving, Roselina sat one final time with the shaman, who had rallied slightly but remained near the end of life.
"Your spirit has flourished in its truth," the elder observed. "Do you understand now why you were chosen?"
"I believe so." Roselina nodded. "My academic credentials gave me the tools to document your traditions with precision. My personal experience of alignment gave me the insight to understand its deeper meaning." The shaman smiled.
"That is part of it. But also, you needed the alignment more desperately than you knew. Your spirit was suffering in silence. The ceremony served both purposes, preserving our knowledge and freeing your truth."
Returning to the university, Roselina established a secure digital and physical archive of the Kavori ceremony, with strict protocols ensuring the knowledge would remain protected until formally requested by tribal representatives. At a faculty dinner shortly after her return, wearing an elegant navy blue dress that had become one of her signatures, Roselina was unusually contemplative.
"You seem deep in thought,"
Professor Martin noted. Though retired now, he had remained a close friend throughout her journey.
"I'm reflecting on how a single decision 20 years ago, accepting the invitation to participate in that ceremony, fundamentally altered my life's trajectory." She touched the silver pendant she always wore. "Not just personally, but professionally. Everything I've contributed to our field has been shaped by that experience."
"Do you think your work would have been less valuable without it?" "Not less valuable, just different. Eugene was a capable anthropologist asking interesting questions, but Roselina has been able to see connections across cultural practices that might have remained invisible otherwise." She smiled. "Plus, I've been much happier these past 20 years than in all the decades before." As Roselina approached retirement, she carefully considered how to structure the next phase of her life. Her wardrobe, now a thoughtfully curated collection of quality pieces that expressed her personal style, was donated to a program supporting professional clothing for transgender women entering the workforce. She kept only what served her current lifestyle: comfortable yet elegant daily wear, a few special occasion outfits, and still those practical field clothes for the limited travel she continued to undertake. Her final academic paper before retirement examined how her understanding of gender had evolved over her career. "When I first experienced gender alignment, I conceptualized it primarily in binary terms: moving from male to female, she wrote. With time and deeper cross-cultural research, I've come to recognize that even this understanding was limited by Western frameworks. Many of the cultures I've studied recognize gender as a multidimensional aspect of human experience, with spiritual dimensions that transcend physical characteristics. The paper concluded, "My personal journey from Eugene to Roselina was not merely about changing gender expression, but about achieving alignment between internal truth and external presentation." In the final chapter of her remarkable journey, Roselina stood as a living embodiment of self-actualization, a testament to the power of understanding one's true nature. Her journey exemplified how cultural influences shape our paths, and yet, through exploration and reflection, we can discover our authentic selves. As her story became a beacon for those seeking their own alignment, Roselina's influence extended far beyond the academic realm. Her work inspired a generation of scholars and students to question, explore, and appreciate the intricate relationship between culture, identity, and self-discovery. Many sought her guidance, hoping to replicate her unique ability to traverse diverse cultural landscapes while remaining steadfast in one's true north. Within the pages of her numerous publications and the hearts of those she mentored, Roselina's legacy thrived. It served as a timeless reminder that while societal frameworks may guide us, it is within ourselves, amidst the tapestry of our experiences, that true alignment is ultimately found. The Kavori symbol around her neck served as more than an accessory. It was a symbol of her personal journey, worn proudly as she navigated life with the certainty that her truth had become an everlasting compass. Andiastase.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!